Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, it appears that the downflow impact, the downstream implications of Zenless, wrong Hoyo game, of Honkai Star Rail and its disastrous fate collab has finally hit. It turns out that Braxophone, ladies and gentlemen, might be quitting Honkai Star Rail because the fate collab is so bad. It's so bad that he hasn't played it. He made a video covering why he's not playing it, and he made a video talking about why everyone thinks it's so bad. But he hasn't had the willpower, I think, in my opinion, as a big fan of the Fate franchise, to actually go ahead and experience it himself. Because why would you want to see your favorite characters getting bastardized in Ultra HD 4K? So with that, why don't we go ahead and hear about why this situation is happening, what is going on, and whether or not my initial belief that the Fate collab is what caused all of this is even true in the first place. Because Brax has put out a video. He's put out a statement. So why don't we give it a bit of a listen as another fellow guide maker in the gacha gaming space?
Yeah, another video like this in a row. That's crazy. You guys are about to hear something from me that I think many of you are not.
Frame one of the video, what I'm wondering about is like, why does he have like gamer gloves on? Are these like actual gamer gloves? Are they like a thing? Do they like make your FPS go higher? Maybe I should invest in one of these.
Something from me that I think many of you are not going to like. And I want to preface,
does he have gunners on too? You know, like the gaming glasses?
The video with this, because to me, this is one of those like, oh, brace for impact moments. Like, I know that there's going to be some pretty crazy response to this, but I think this is pretty big news because in today's video, I'm going to be addressing quite a few things, including how I feel about the games that I've been playing, where we are, where we're going, and contracts and more.
Fate collab was so bad. It had dude rethinking his entire career. This is like when you hear about a car accident that happened on your commute to work, but this was the one day you decided to work from home. And then, like, you know, nothing actually happened to you, but you start thinking about what could have been. And then you start, like, reevaluating all the past life decisions you had. You start doing, like, a bit of reflection. And then you almost, like, become a new man afterwards, even though, right, nothing actually happened to you. This is what this is coming off as.
You know, a lot of really great games have released over the past year, and even beyond that. We've had so many great games released over the past few years. Things like Clair Obscur, the Oblivion remaster, Metaphor Refantasio, Monster Hunter Wilds, Dune Awakening. There's so many other games that have come out in that time too, and so many.
To be fair, it feels like 2024, and honestly, parts of like 2023, they kind of had like some bad games, low-key. Yeah, it feels like 2024 in particular was not a great year for gaming. Maybe that's why it felt like there were so many people in gacha. But then 2025 kind of brought it back.
Somebody like fun group games, party games with friends, other single-player games.
But then in retrospect, 2025 was a terrible year for gacha. So it's kind of like it's almost like a flipping of the scales, where like gacha was better in 2024 to a degree, and now it's like straight up worse. Yeah, no, every Hoyo game is so bad.
And there's even more like amazing indie titles out there that are getting way less coverage. And I'm gonna be real with you guys, I haven't played any of them. Well, except for Monster Hunter Wilds, I did play that quite a bit. I enjoyed it, but I haven't played any of the new content on that. I got 1 hour into Oblivion, the remaster. I got like 45 minutes into Dune Awakening. I haven't even opened Clair Obscur. And there's so many more games than that.
I can see where he's coming from. I'm in the same boat. And I'm pretty sure the reasoning that's going to come out, and I'm not saying that like this is like bad reasoning at all, is that there's just not enough time, right? Not enough time if you're trying to actually have some semblance, some degree of like work-life balance. You oftentimes spend a lot of time as a guide maker or a CC kind of focused on your own game. So certain guides, certain scripts, certain writing, certain types of videos can take a lot longer than you might anticipate. As somebody that doesn't, you know, that isn't a part of like the entire like drafting and the composure process. And at the end of the day, right, unless you're going to like stress yourself out by forcing yourself to play games when you know that you should be like taking a rest or diversifying, going to get exercise or like going to hang out with friends, do all of that. Well, there's something that ends up getting put at the bottom of the priority list. And that oftentimes is that laundry list of like actually good, fun games, TV shows, books, all of that. It's when the games become work that it becomes an issue. And so, how else to fix this problem than to start taking games that you're not having as much fun with and start putting them at the bottom?
I've realized over the past little bit that I just really miss playing real games. And so I begin to ask myself, why? Why am I in this position where I'm not playing these games? Why am I in this position where I feel like I can't spend the time to sit down and enjoy these games? And the answer that I came to, and the conclusion that I came to, is because right now I'm constantly chasing the schedule of whatever gacha game I am covering. The gacha games I'm playing, Wuthering Waves and Honkai Star Rail, and many other gacha games will release patches every 3 to 6 weeks, depending on the game. And with those patches come new characters, and my content's all centered around helping you guys understand those characters and build them to be very strong, so that way you guys don't get completely taken advantage of and wiped off the face of the planet whenever you try to complete something like Memory of Chaos. And I really enjoy educating. I don't know how many of you guys know this about me, but I'm actually a music educator, or I was a music educator. YouTube kind of took off for me when I was in my student teaching. So I got my degree in music education, and I used to teach kids during a student teaching section of my college career. But then after that, I was like, oh, I really like YouTube, and
I mean, it makes sense. Usually the best guide makers, and I would like to consider Brax to be, yeah, he seems like a pretty successful guide maker, to be honest. I would consider him to be one of like the topper tier guide maker. And it turns out, yeah, his career profession hasn't really changed too much. He taught kids during the whole music arc, and now he's still teaching kids during the gacha game arc, except the kids are way more retarded.
really like teaching people through YouTube. And so I've continued to make like guide videos for you guys for a really long time. And with HSR, it's been just over 2 years, but I started in Genshin, and Genshin, we should...
shit.
Years, but I started in Genshin, and Genshin, you guys probably noticed, but I don't cover Genshin anymore. The reason
The kids were too stupid.
that I don't cover Genshin anymore is because the game doesn't
He signed up to be a general education teacher, not a special education one.
have anything new to offer me that makes me want to keep playing. They have a story that I think a lot of people are interested in, but for me, I can't really get behind gacha stories that are about selling the newest character. And it really feels like so many of these characters are introduced in gacha games just to be thrown away up until like a random event 3 years in the future where they come back with a couple dialogue lines. But it feels like most of these characters aren't even really a part of the world that much outside of serving the purpose of getting sales by being in the story and by fleshing out the characters. So like, I understand they build the world, but it also kind of plays into this whole idea that every single main character in a gacha game is just a self-insert. And when I think about games that I really loved, like The Witcher 3, for example, that's about a guy who has a ton of development throughout the entire series that makes him who he is, and it makes him such an interesting character.
I played The Witcher 3. He's entirely correct in terms of like the characterization and the stuff like that and the level of fulfillment. This is like the difference between a shallow but very wide pool and a more rich, a more deep pool that maybe only has like, you know, one specific path you can sort of swim down. In a gacha game, it is entirely 1000%. I think that your enjoyment, your ability to enjoy a gacha game and its story hinges on how much you're able to enjoy a lot of like short stories kind of like put together as opposed to like one comprehensive sort of like tale. There might be like an overarching plot, but gacha games are more like mini stories kind of like hooked together that might like fulfill like one entire vision. But you don't ever end up getting to follow one sort of character the entire way. I would say that's a very, that's kind of like the baseline concept when it comes to like the Hoyoverse titles, where much more of the story is based off of what the other playable characters are doing, not necessarily the MC. But in Wuthering Waves, that's where I can see like a bit of a difference, where you're given a lot more reasons to actually care about the MC. The MC actually feels like the MC. You get to see a lot of their progression. And the playable characters, oftentimes more than not, actually feel like the side characters to a degree, even in the stories that they're involved in, which I think is better for like the overall holistic feeling of the story. If I could think of a gacha game that's most similar to The Witcher 3 in terms of its story, I would say it's Wuthering Waves compared to the other Hoyo titles. I know it's still a far way away, but it's still the most similar in terms of that type of, you know, traditional type of adventure RPG story. And maybe that's why it's able to grasp and hook in more of like these normie type of players in the first place. You know, think about your Asmon Golds, your Nicholas Lights, that sort of thing.
So much more interesting than a self-insert could ever be. So honestly, just I don't really like self-inserts, and I don't really like stories that focus on side characters more than the main character. And that's not a Genshin specific problem, that's just...
I think Wuba did a lot of that in the early story arcs, but then from 2.0 onward, it's kind of shifted completely.
It's kind of why I'm not really interested in the Genshin story that much, and that's kind of all that's left of that game, because I've already beaten Abyss. I have all the characters that I wanted, and I'm kind of explorationed out. I'm not really too interested in chasing exploration in that game, so like I'm kind of just done with it. And I fear that in Honkai Star Rail, I've kind of reached a similar point where off stream, I don't play that much outside of the CE server. Now, when the CE server comes, it takes up all of my free time, and I spend all of my time on the CE server testing out characters to bring you guys guide videos that I believe in and that hopefully help you guys a lot. But nowadays, it is very difficult for me to even write these guides. Like, I'm really struggling to sit down, test a character a bunch, and then like just write up the video script and edit.
I wonder what reason he's going to get for this, because I think it's pretty cut and paste, and I think it's pretty simple. Bro doesn't like the game anymore. I'm gonna be honest. I think the part that really seals the deal for me is him saying that he doesn't actually play the baseline game anymore. All that he mostly plays is the CE server. One of the things that, like, you know, that's a part about guide making, right, is that as you're getting through and you're getting all the education materials ready for another person, or like the other, you know, the people viewing it, you get to experience yourself all of these characters and their mechanics, how they work and everything, so that you can go in and when you play the characters in your playthrough on your account, you know, you'll naturally be on top as well. But it's like, if he's not even playing the game, it's like all you're doing is teaching music, but you're never actually going out and playing yourself. I'd be kind of sussed out if somebody was teaching me music and they never actually play the instrument in their own leisure. I would want somebody that like plays the instrument that I'm learning from. I want them to play it in their free time. Not just like not just like once in a while, and not only to just like teach, if you know what I mean. So in a way, I feel like this is good for him, and it's potentially also good for Honkai Star Rail's community as well.
Edit the video. And what I've kind of realized is that this isn't burnout. I mean, I've been burnt out before. I burn out over and over and over when I push content too hard, but this is just how it is. This is just gacha games. And unfortunately for me, what I fear has happened is the creator experience server coming out weeks ahead of a character's release not only takes away the hype of getting to do everything with the community when the character comes out, but it also means that I have to spend weeks ahead of the character's release prepping content, and it makes it so when the character comes out, I don't actually want to play the character. But not
So is the creator server a good or a bad thing? Naturally, right? There's like a good incentive for the creator server where you get to go ahead and, you know, release your guides way earlier than everybody else. But it's almost like, yeah, Brax is truly like the player. It's like the player's creator, and the guide making process, all this sort of like red tape and like the timeline of it seems to be what's actually killing his enjoyment.
Not only that, making the guides themselves takes me like a week. And because there's multiple characters that release some patches, and because I'm also doing Wuthering Waves, I've realized that like, I don't think I can do it anymore.
This is also another truth about the situation that I don't think I've stated enough yet. I think if the Fate collab was good, he's not making this video. Genuinely. I think that if the Fate collab was actually a solid product, a good product, and that he went in and he enjoyed it, he wouldn't be making this video. Because then he would be enjoying Honkai Star Rail. And the thing is, like, at a baseline, once you stop having an enjoyment for something based off of what's, you know, actually occurred, they always say, do what you love for work and it'll never feel like a job. I feel like this was something that he used to love, and now it's starting to feel like a job.
I have one of the greatest jobs in the world, and I'll never take that for granted. I appreciate the hell out of you guys, and I'm so glad that I can
Not pre-watched, by the way.
make YouTube videos for my living. It's amazing. But I also come to realize that like any job that you really just don't like doing probably isn't worth doing unless you absolutely have to. And
wait, no, I'm telling you, this is not pre-watched. I didn't hear this part on his stream.
I know that if I put my time and efforts into either a game I'm enjoying more at a time or content that I know I'm enjoying more at the time, I'm going to make better content. And I think as long as there are people like you guys who are interested in my content, I can really find a way to make YouTube a super enjoyable and fulfilling job in basically any niche. So with that said, going forward, you guys, I'm going to be taking a temporary hiatus from Honkai Star Rail guides.
Is it going to be temporary though?
And the reason is because I want to fall in love with gaming again, find my passion for gaming again, and get to play some of these amazing things that I feel like I've missed out on trying to keep up with the gacha patch cycle. I want to make better content for you guys, but I don't think I can do that anymore on Honkai Star Rail guides, at least not right now. It's possible that maybe in the future, I will enjoy Honkai Star Rail guide making again to the extent that I did when the game first released, and I'll be able to put out those guides, but right now I'm just not feeling it. The videos that I enjoyed making the most over these past few months have been the game reviews. I really enjoyed making that Duet Night Abyss video. I scripted, voiced, recorded, and played all of that Duet Night Abyss footage that you see in that entire video. It was all done by me. The Warframe video as well. I did that one entirely by myself. The Etheria Restart video I did pass off to an editor, and they did a great job, but I think that if I edited that one, I also would have enjoyed it a little bit better as well. What I really like doing is talking about games, and a lot of the time, that means I have to play the game, or I get to play the game, isn't it?
So the problem here is that the stuff takes too much time. It feels like work. And when it feels like work, you're not nearly enjoying it as much. It's kind of like the whole situation of how you're gonna like balance out your day. Anyone that's ever worked legitimately hard days at work that are like 9, 10, 11, 12 hours will tell you that the second they get home, they're likely not spending a majority of their time on like leisure or more like fun things. They're just trying to like get some rest, go to sleep early, and then just get ready for like the next day so that they can actually work at their job and, you know, get the results that they need. And the thing is that you only expect that to happen for certain stretches of the time. And you will always expect that there's going to be that one moment where the work maybe goes back to regular levels and you'll be able to get back to the leisure things. But from what I'm hearing, it's that at the start, when it came to Honkai Star Rail, the work also felt like leisure. And so there was like a schedule that was getting taken on where a majority of your day was spent on this work that felt like you were relaxing because it was on a game that you loved. And then as the game just started progressively getting worse and worse and worse, and started lowering in quality as time went on, and then I guess just hit its peak with this Fate collab, that's when you have to have the moment of, gosh, this work or leisure that had been taking up a majority of my day, well, it's not really there anymore. And now it just feels like I'm doing 10, 12 hours of work every single day. And I think like having that wake up moment, having that realization is definitely something that, I mean, I'm just glad it happened sooner rather than later. I just hope that Braxophone has like a plan set out for how he's gonna like pivot the type of content that he's gonna do. It already sounds like, you know, like the game reviews, that sort of stuff is something that he already had in mind. But I feel like this just sort of transition in itself is something really scary, right? Especially when YouTube, and I'm imagining YouTube, is like Brax's like main source of like revenue right now. So the one thing I'm hoping is that this transition for him is like super smooth. And second, he knows exactly what to do with all of this new time that he is going to be having. Because one thing about HSR's patch cycle that, you know, everyone knows is a little bit crazy is that they release 2 new characters every single update, and they pretty much never, ever take a break. And when you're doing also Wuthering Waves, where they sometimes have 2 new characters every update, but they also do regularly take breaks, yeah, that could be quite a situation, to be honest.
Even better way to look at it. For me, I'm looking forward to so many games on the horizon. There's so many games I haven't played, and I really just want to reclaim gaming for myself because I haven't been able to do that since I've been kind of following this patch schedule. It has been quite exhausting for me. If you guys want the quality and the funny jokes and everything that are in my guide videos, I just can't do that stuff live. I can't make it easier for me to make that content. I've already optimized it all that I can, and it's just not what I want to do anymore. At least not right now. So what I'm going to be doing going forward is I'm going to be making some videos about new games that are upcoming, and then
all I scrape from that is that Brax's humor has a prep time. Yeah. He's got to spend some time cooking when it comes to that sort of stuff.
And once I find a game that I really enjoy, that I really want to latch onto, that I have a super big interest in, I'll probably cover that game as well. When I was streaming talking about this yesterday at twitch.tv/Brax, I did get a question in chat, and they were asking, well, won't Hoyoverse like be upset about this? Isn't this like big for Hoyoverse? So let's talk about Hoyoverse contracts and how working with these companies has been. The first thing I need to say is that the idea that I'm on some kind of contract with Hoyoverse is a huge misconception. I've never been on a long-term contract with Honkai Star Rail once, not a single time. What I do get sometimes is commission from them to make a video. And that commission, you can think of it like a sponsorship where they're like, hey, we'll pay you to make this video. But the difference with the commission is that they're not actually over my shoulder telling me what I can and can't say outside of things that are like a beta NDA, right? So like if there's a character that's not out yet, but I have access to them, I can't talk about them, right? Until the embargo's up. But in the case of where I say my opinion on a character, as long as it's not blatantly wrong, they don't care. Like if I came out and I said Acheron is actually a terrible unit when she released, they'd probably be like, you should reevaluate that. I think they would have even still let me release the video, to be honest, but I think they would have probably given me some feedback there, right? But there seems to be this huge misconception where everyone thinks I'm on some kind of HSR contract. I am not.
I think the differentiation that maybe isn't as clear from what he's saying is that there are dedicated videos that sponsors will ask you to make, and then across those videos, the sponsor will go ahead and review it, and they're perfectly in line, right, to tell you to adjust wording, take out certain things, do all of that, blah, 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 because they're literally paying you to make that video and, you know, adhere to these guidelines. Commissions, on the other hand, are just like, hey, if you make like 2, 3, 4, 5 videos about our game this month, we'll pay you X amount of dollars. And they don't necessarily care what's actually in the videos as much, I think, to the degree that Brax is saying. And so the idea is that a dedicated video contract is going to be a lot more, usually a lot higher revenue for you as a creator. And it's also going to come with a lot more restrictions in terms of what you're able to say. And so you typically have to put a lot more work into a dedicated video to make sure it adheres to all those different guidelines. But it looks like Hoyoverse doesn't necessarily do that as much.
All of my opinions on HSR have always been my own. I've always really loved HSR. I thought it was a super fun game, but times have changed, my feelings have changed, and that's all. And if you're dumb enough to think that I'm lying about that, if you want to keep putting on your tinfoil hat and keep shit talking me and adding me and try to rage bait me or whatever, like, I don't care. I just assume everyone who's dumb is rage baiting anyways, because that.
And let me just say a similar thing in regards to HSR and Curo Games. Curo Games also offers similar sort of contracts for creators where you're not like monitored in what you're saying. However, you still have to make sure you're not like saying like some outright like malicious or wrong shit. But yeah, Curo also has similar contracts to what Brax was talking about for HSR, where it's just like, hey, if you release XYZ videos, then we'll just pay you flat amount of money for releasing that many videos. And I think he'll get into something when it comes to those contracts that we'll talk about a little bit later.
Then it makes it easier to cope with the fact that people are that stupid. The fact is, for Honkai Star Rail characters, they never paid me to say that every new character was broken or anything. It's just that they did have a blatant power creep issue with the newer units coming out, and that they all were just better than the old characters. There have been a lot of changes and lack of.
I like how bro has to spend so much time covering his ass. He's like, no, I'm not saying that this character is insanely broken and overpowered because I'm on contract to sell as many of this unit as possible. No, I'm saying the character's broken and overpowered because they are broken and overpowered. Like, literally. That's why it says it on literally every single thumbnail for the past 6 months.
Changes to Honkai Star Rail that I don't like. I think it is ridiculous that it took them this long to make a skip button for the story, but I'm glad they added it. I think that relic presets need to be a thing. There is absolutely no excuse for there not to be some. I'm pretty sure the business reason for there not being relic presets is because they want to keep up player retention, which happens when you change all of your relic sets to speed tune characters. We know what speed tuning is now. We should be able to quick swap relic sets, but they don't want us doing that, I'm pretty sure. I would love to be proven wrong, though, if they want to introduce them. The endgame content is quite stale. There's a lack of events. I mean, there are events, but there's not as many of them as there used to be. And of course, there's the power creep problem. Like, there's a lot of issues with Honkai Star Rail. I think it's still quite an enjoyable game for like a couple hundred hours, though. And that's why I've been covering it, because I really genuinely enjoyed the game. I just got tired of making guide videos. There was never really a monetary incentive from the company for me to play Honkai Star Rail. I get paid.
Okay, Brax, we gotta be honest here. You're not enjoying it as much, right? What made you enjoy the guide videos in the first place? Probably like all the great strategy, right? Probably all the great strategy you would have from pulling new units where, you know, you could talk about the different teams, that are available. You could talk about all the unique ways that you could approach the content. Nowadays, I guarantee that HSR guides are just like, all right, how can we make this broken character look even more broken? Oh boy, look, they're steamrolling every single endgame mode. Let me just swap out this other character and then see how they're steamrolling it even more. Or if I swap them out for this other one instead, they're steamrolling it slightly less. And at that point, right, it's almost like it's got to get old at some point, just going in and then just obliterating all the content in the game and then not having almost any challenge at all because you're just demonstrating footage of every character with their light cone, and they're so hilariously broken and they're so hilariously unbalanced that it almost feels like you're on autopilot and there's no more like actual critical thinking to get the guide working anymore. That's what I imagine Honkai Star Rail guides have become.
Like
And it's in a turn-based game, so there's like not that much actual gameplay to go off of either.
Actual pennies from them by comparison to what other brands are paying me. They pay me like not even minimum wage. I think they pay me like a 15th of my rate that I get from other companies when I take sponsorships from them. And if I was just doing videos for Honkai Star Rail and I wasn't taking any sponsors at all, I wouldn't be able to afford the mortgage that I have or the rent that I had before. So I don't know. I wanted to clear that up. I don't think people are going to believe me anyways, though. So
that genuinely has to be, I'm assuming that's less than $500 a video. That's my take. I'm assuming it's less than like $500, maybe less than $400-300 a video. That's what I'm assuming. From the whole like 1/15th, the whole thing is talking about not being able to afford rent. I'm assuming, right? I'm assuming that if Hoyoverse paid at least above 1,000, then rent maybe would not be off the table. But not even being able to afford rent, I have to assume it's under 4 digits, the payment. I mean, I'm gonna be honest, for guides like that, you would assume there'd be something going on.
But I guess it is what it is, right? The amount of money that Hoyoverse is paying me is not enough to keep me making videos. The reason I made videos is because I was gonna make them anyways, and the fact they were paying me was a nice little bonus on the side. I think people need to, go interact with a real human being every once in a while. Some of the stuff you see online is just insane, man. But
and just so you guys know, $1,000 a month, yeah, it might seem like a lot to people that are still in middle school. $1,000 a month, if that's like the money that you actually make, you will be homeless. I'm not joking. Like 1K a month is literally homeless.
I'll tell you who I do have a contract with. It's Curo Games. Right now, I'm working with them to make some character guides. It's actually been a thing for a while. And you know what? I actually really do like working with Curo. I think they've given me a lot of great opportunities. This whole thing about like contracts and being evil and lying to people, I don't know where it came from. I've never had a single person complain about me being on a Curo contract, and I've talked about being on a Curo contract, but I keep getting people complaining that I'm on the Hoyoverse contract when I'm not on a Hoyoverse contract. So I don't really know what's up with that. But anyways, I guess the reason I mentioned the Curo thing is because I am going to continue to make Wuthering Waves guides basically until that contract's up, and then I'll decide what I want to do from there. It's not just a Honkai Star Rail issue. I actually just think I've gotten bored of making guides in general.
This is the take that I'll have for why people think Brax is on a Hoyo contract. It's pretty simple. People think he's on a Hoyo contract because he doesn't talk as openly negative about the game as maybe some other people. Or really, because he's in a group of creators that doesn't really talk as openly negative about the game. And it's pretty simple, right? The situation. If you have content that's typically focused around guides or typically focused around what's good in the game and the new features and all of that, then it's not actually in your best interest to push out critical content, because your initial viewer base is going to include a lot of toxic positive animals that are going to go ahead, right? And the second you push out any sort of like slightly negative content or critical content, you're going to end up getting like bandwagoned on by your own subscribers. That sort of dynamic is literally why Pokey waited about 3 to 4 days to make his video about the Fate story. You realize this was only uploaded 1 day ago, when the Fate collab had been live for about almost close to a week. He wanted to wait to see what the pulse check was on the community so that he wouldn't end up alienating his toxic positive subscriber base by pushing out critical content. He's just sitting there waiting on the fence. It's about 3 inches deep in his ass. Slowly, it's like as he waits longer, it keeps going deeper in. He's just like waiting until he can see what the indisputable take of the community is, and then he's gonna make his take so that he's agreeing with the majority. And once it was confirmed that the majority opinion was that the Fate story was bad, he started publishing critical content about it. That's the best way to be able to guarantee growth. That's the best way to ensure that you're not going to anger your viewer base. And this is the thing, right? A lot of people like taking different ways to go ahead and curate their audience and make their content. Oftentimes, right, the safer way is to simply not talk about negative things as much. And because Brax was in the boat of somebody, right, that didn't talk about negative things as much, he's starting naturally to do more so a lot more now. Well, I mean, considering that most of, if not all of his content in the past was just guides, it would feel somewhat out of place, right, for him to have a video talking about what's like fucked up and wrong in the game. And this is the thing. I will tell you that he's on the record making videos like that before, but it's only like somewhat recently that he started doing it. Obviously, he has this whole video about why Ethereum restart sucks, but you know, that could be seen as appealing to HSR. But he made a video before about the power creep, right, and how it's a massive issue. So yeah, bit of a pivot here. Is that what happened to Brand Online? I actually think a similar thing actually happened, yeah, to Brand Online as well, where he was avoiding making critical content about Genshin Impact, obviously because I mean, let's just be honest here, right? His subscriber base was for a long time just Genshin Impact, but as he started branching out, absorbing more content, doing different things, now we're seeing like Limbus, now we're seeing Nikke, now he kind of, I don't think he really particularly cares that much anymore about what people are saying about him in terms of his Genshin takes. It's just, the more conjoined you are with the game's future, like Mr. Pokey, the more you're gonna have like these sort of like fence-sitting sort of videos like this. As you branch out, do more variety, play more games, blah, 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 do all of that stuff, cover a wider variety of content, you start caring less and less about alienating because your audience isn't solely dedicated to one game. And I think that's a big part of what Brax is trying to do here right now.
I've never had a single person complain about me being on a Curo contract, and I've talked about being on a Curo contract, but I keep getting people complaining that I'm on the Hoyoverse contract when I'm not on a Hoyoverse contract. So
okay, so yeah, we just gave the reasons for why people might think he's on a Hoyo contract. Nowadays, in the present, there's no reason to, at least in my opinion, because of the more critical content he's been putting out.
I don't really know what's up with that. But anyways, I guess the reason I mentioned the Curo thing is because I am going to continue to make Wuthering Waves guides basically until that contract's up, and then I'll decide what I want to do from there.
Uh-oh. Is this a competitor leaving the space, buddy boy? Ooh, looks like one mini boss is exiting. We'll see. Honestly, I hope Brax doesn't leave. You might think that like, oh, I would be celebrating this, right? Because then I could be like, oh my gosh, yes, -1 competitor. The more guide makers you have leaving the space, the worse overall it is for the game. You don't need to think about it from the perspective of, oh wow, this big guide maker is stealing my views. It's also like the big guide maker is also helping to drive the algorithm about the game and suggest every single guide that's being out there about this new unit to random fucking people, and then they might click it, and then it, you know, helps the overall ecosystem. Brax leaving would be very, very bad for the Wuthering Waves space, so I'm actually not hoping that it happens.
It's not just a Honkai Star Rail issue. I actually just think I've gotten bored of making guides in general, and I would like to make some other content. I would like to talk about some other games as well. But with that said, we'll see what happens, because I have been enjoying playing Wuthering Waves quite a bit more recently. Actually, basically just since 2.0, I've been enjoying Wuthering Waves like a heck of a lot more than I enjoyed at launch. But either way, I just don't really want that to be all of my content. I really had such an awakening with the Duet Night Abyss video, the Warframe video.
A slight awakening with those videos, and then an abrupt fucking rise at midnight when the Fate collab dropped. Let's not lie here. The timing of this video and the timing of like this whole thing, it's way too convenient to just be like, oh yeah, that video I made a month ago was like the driving force of this. Nah, brother, just say how it is. Just say how it is. No Rin, dog shit story, and like no unlimited blade works in the story is come on, let's be real here, man.
The Ethereum restart video where I'm like, I just like talking about games. I just really want to talk about them. I want to play them, and I want to bring you guys like game news and stuff too. So that's the direction we're going. And honestly, I'm a little bummed I couldn't make this video more entertaining. I've thought about like a bunch of ways, like how do I break the news to them and make it more interesting.
You should have Subway Surfers on the side, bucko.
That way it ends on a happy note. But realistically, guys, I think it is only a happy note if you guys are here for me and not just for my HSR guide videos. So for some of us, this is going to be goodbye, and I acknowledge that, and I recognize that, and I appreciate every single one of you guys who stuck with me through all of my guide videos, whether it was Genshin, whether it was HSR, whether it was Wuthering Waves. But going forward, I just really need to reclaim this for myself so that way I can be happier and make even better videos. Because at the end of the day, I want to talk about what I want to talk about, but it makes me me the most happy to be able to make a really good video on it. Does that mean I'm quitting gacha forever? No. I mean, the thing is, even though gacha games can get stale after a while, I really am looking forward to Arknight's Enfield. That game plays differently from any of the other gachas we have right now. And what you guys need to understand is at the end of the day, gacha is a monetization method that affects gameplay. But if a game is just good and interesting and worth putting a couple hundred hours into, I'm gonna play it. I'm gonna enjoy every second that I can get out of those games. And when I stop enjoying them, maybe it's time to play something else, you know? But I'll be covering Arknight's Enfield most likely, assuming that game didn't change drastically from the last beta. And I'm also looking forward to Blue Protocol Star Resonance, despite all of the issues that it looks like that game is going to have.
I think a lot of people know Brax as like a guide maker. And the thing is, when you're a guide maker, it's almost like, to a degree, it feels like you have to like build up a reputation in the community. Nobody's really going to like stick with a guide maker that does like 1 or 2 guides about a game and then just like dips completely after that. And I feel like that whole mindset of like pick it up while it's good and then put it down when it's in like, you know, when you're not enjoying it as much, almost like isn't as conducive to the whole mindset or, you know, the direction of a guide maker. So I guess we'll just have to see what happens with Brax, what type of future content he's going to be pushing out, because I see the other side of the equation of, you know, the type of content that he says he wants to do. I think it is quality content, but yeah, I mean, hey, this might mean he's just not doing guides anymore at all. More of like a general, you know, gacha or just a general game CC. Looks like some other creators in the space are going to have their time to shine.
If you guys are here just for HSR guides and I'm not going to see you anymore until I come back to HSR and doing guides, then thank you so much for everything, and I will see you guys later. But if you guys are here for this next chapter where we switch up what we're doing a little bit, I look forward to seeing you all on the other side. If you guys have any awesome games that you think are like lesser known, more niche, or you think need the attention of a bigger YouTube channel.
Hello Kitty Island Adventures 2. Yeah, I gotta say, this is quite a bit of a lore bomb. Kind of a crazy video. And of course, a crazy, not really clickbaity title, because I do think that's all, folks, for a significant number of individuals. Yeah, so I just gotta say, kind of sad news, I think, for a lot of games. Potentially sad news in the future. But this is a person basically saying that they're doing what makes them happy, because there has been a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, or really in the forefront, that are the cause for this unhappiness. And so they're going to stop doing the things that make them unhappy and start doing more of the things that do make them happy. At a baseline, you can't really be upset at anybody for deciding to take this sort of decision, go down this route, because everybody needs to live their own lives. And this is more of like a real person thing rather than some sort of like internet persona, internet whatever, content creation sort of thing. And I think everyone should take some time to respect that. That'll be that, ladies and gentlemen. We will be uploading this with our own clickbait title because, well, gotta learn from the best. Let me know what you all think about it. Peace out.